event tonight. I'm Cameron Lachlan, I'm going to be your chair. I'm impartial, that's what I'm going to start with, and we're going to stick with that. Tonight we're going to be talking about the logical ways to leave the EU, and with Sillars and Gary Parker. First two things are fire exits if anything happens, or it doesn't, or there. I think you through that before you come in. I don't think we need to worry about phones. If we're a big kind of rent-up room and we live in, we should be okay. And tonight we're going to be hearing about why Scotland should leave the EU and why we're in its best interest too. I'd like to introduce Jim Sillars. Now, Jim Sillars is a veteran politician. People like me would like to aspire to be him. He's known as one of Scotland's best political orators. I don't know if that's because everyone in Scotland can hear him when he speaks, or what that's about, but anything he has to say on a topic is definitely worth listening to. The other side is Gary Parker. Gary Parker is an esteemed businessman, even if I can say that, I'm saying anything. And he is one of the most down-to-earth and straight-talking people I've ever met. I've worked with him on campaigns. If you want a question answered, ask it straight to Gary, and he'll give you the best answer. I don't want to waffle on too much, but straight into the nitty-gritty. I'm going to ask Gary Parker an introduction. Not much, so a few things I'd like to say, and we'll straight into questions and answers. Raise your hand and ask your questions to the panel. If you'd like a specific member to answer it, just say. Okay?
Thanks, Cameron. Well, actually, I asked if I could go first because I didn't fancy following Jim, that's not always a good idea. So I'm here, I don't know how much you know about me, but as Cameron said, I campaigned during the yes referendum. I've been an SNP voter pretty much all my life. I will say I voted for the SNP the last twice, and that was because I wasn't happy with the candidate and other reasons as well. I'm Cunningham North is my constituency. So I got into this really late. It was in the yes campaign that I got involved in this kind of thing, and I was one of the organisers. And as Cameron said, we campaigned together in my area, which is Saltcoats. We got probably the best result in the whole Scotland, considering where we started to where we finished. And we did that by talking to people and asking them questions and just being honest with people. Because in this debate just now, I'm pretty sure you'll agree, I think we've got project fear against project exaggeration. And I'm being honest that both sides are spinning it too far. So I think tonight we would like to put our case in a very balanced way and try and answer the questions as honestly as we can. And if I don't know the answer, I can't say my answer. If I don't know, I'll just say I don't know. So I hope that's okay. So from this, I'd just like to say the EU, if you think about its introduction, it was set up by an Italian communist called Spinelli, with the very best of intentions to try and stop wars across Europe, which is, you know, a great idea really. And I'm a kind of person that I like good news. I do. I think good news are good things if they came back. And the idea of stopping wars right across Europe was an honourable one. And to create a political union was never really part of the thing that we are accepted that we went into. It's morphed into that, and you see people getting very greedy over the EU, certainly the ones that sit in Brussels and Strasbourg. So that's the intro. I wanted to say that with the sort of lots that I work on, finances, our industries, fair immigration, NHS, other services like that, and sovereignty, the other things that I want to touch on. On the finances, you do hear these figures getting thrashed about. Now, I heard Nicola Sturgeon and Alan Smith say that for every pound we put in, we get 10 back from the EU. Now, I don't know if I'm in a position to argue with them, but I would like to know where that comes from, because I don't imagine Germany is paying it all, and I certainly don't think Bulgaria is. So where does these figures come from? I honestly don't know. What I do is I tend to be happy about some countries, things like that, some impartial things, and I'll tell you what I plan to find out. The figure that you probably come up with, when you hear a lot of it, was cost us £350 million to do this wise. Well, that's actually true, and I've got a bit of sympathy with that, because the money that comes back has strings attached to it, but it's still not the figures that you guys made the decision to make. So I break it down, and if you break it down into Scotland, Scotland put in £900 million a week to the EU. A year. They get in the rebate is 180. 200 million comes back in jobs, subsidies for farmers, support jobs, things like that, structures like Ford Road Crossing, things like that. It leaves you with £520 million net figure. I don't think we need to complain about it. There's a lot of money. We don't need to lie about it. And, other people need to say we get 10 for every pound that we put in. Let's just be straight with people. And those figures come from absolutely fair figures. There's loads of it. It's a charitable website, I don't know in actual fact. And then, if you think about the industries, you've got, for me, the steel and the fishing are the two big industries. The steel industry, the best example we use is the Ford Road Crossing, the new Ford Crossing, sorry. And that was designed by Sweden, which might be fine because they designed a good structure, so maybe that's a great thing to do. But it was built by Danish, German, and English companies. There were no Scottish companies involved in it whatsoever. The steel came from Spain, Poland, and by EU ruling, China's dumped steel. No Scottish steel was used, and we've got multiple industries, not just here, but we've got them down in Gateshead, and we've got them down in Wales, that we could have used the steel from those and saved those industries at the time when they needed it most. The EU rulings know best. The fishing bill, we've got 60% in Scotland of EU waters. Germany knows an awful lot more about fisheries than we, but if we get these stats anyway, 60% of the EU waters are Scottish. The waters that we have get 4 times more yield than any others anywhere else. And the industries that Scotland gave away, Britain as well, I'm here really in Scotland, we gave away 115,000 jobs in today's market. It was just under 100,000 at the time. Jobs were given away because of that. And it equated to about £1.5 billion industry. And that's because we've opened our waters to other people. Now you might agree with that, I actually don't know, but it's decimated the industries here in Scotland. And there's a lot to be said for the coastal communities and the jobs that they support. So that's another thing I think the EU's not been the best for Scotland. The next one is immigration. It's a touchy subject, and it's one that you can easily get yourself into bother with. Well, I'll be quite open with you, and I'll tell you that as far as I'm concerned, Scotland needs immigration. The NHS will fall down if we didn't have immigrants. And I don't care if I go to the doctor, if it's a nurse or a doctor, where they come from, where they're born, or language. It doesn't make any difference. It's not in the UK. And I've got strong feelings on asylum seekers. I feel that when you've got genuine asylum seekers and we've got empty council houses, I'm just say get them in there. I don't really care what it costs. But there's another side to that. It's all right for me to give my opinions because I don't like to see that kind of thing happening. But if you think how councils plan for things, you get a rough figures will tell us, we know what 5 years' time and in P1 for instance going to be, etc., etc., etc. That tells us about schools. It doesn't help us when we don't know how many people we have to bring in. Controlled immigration brings that. And again, if you think about immigration, why only the EU, why can't we bring skilled people? We needed it. We needed a lot of people from Australia. We were desperate to come here when we had a doctor's crisis. We couldn't get in because we had to give the jobs to the EU. So in that respect, I think we should be able to choose the people on the points-based system as Canada do. I know if we was on Australia, when we talked about the Yes campaign, we talked about Canada because it seemed to be a better one. That was that. The other thing, and probably like Jim's expertise, go ahead of mine, that TTIP, if anybody doesn't know what that is, it's a trade agreement that's set up between, secret more or less, between Brussels and Washington. And it means that companies can come in and buy up the NHS or buy up any private services. And it means that if they don't make a profit, they can sue the governments for the monies that they lose. Who pays for that? Who pays the taxpayers? So that's a thing that threatens us. And I think what bothered me quite a lot, I feel kind of bad about it now, I sat with Philippa Whitford and we did quite a few meetings with these things. I sat with Philippa Whitford down in the Prestwick and we talked about how Scottish independence could save the NHS. But it wasn't until after the meeting that I did my research, which slapped my wrist, but that's what happened. And it was correct in one way that we get 10% in Scotland what the English budget is. So if we get privatised, eventually we get squeezed out as well, and that's the way it works. But when I realised that TTIP was a European thing, I had to say I have to stop campaigning on this. I can't talk about it anymore, because we've made a mistake here, and we've been led into that mistake by the information that we get from headquarters. And that to, that wasn't the SNP incident, but that was the GETS HQ that gave us that information. So not sit here blaming SNP or a member of the SNP, but it was something that I didn't feel comfortable with after doing these meetings. Philip, you don't see talking about it anymore. I think for probably good reason. So that's that. And then the last thing for me is sovereignty. I don't know if how much you guys read the papers and what you've been seeing, but I've been criticised quite a lot for speaking out about the policy that we seem to take. Is that why do we want, for Scottish independence, I have to say, why do we think it's acceptable to be ruled by Brussels and not London? And does that not come across the as anti-English? I've never met anything the SNP as anti-English. I'm telling that quite honestly, because if I did, I would tell them. I have my family come from there, and I would tell them. But it does seem that way to me. If you want independence, just be honest about it and say that you want independence. Don't say Brussels can control fishing for us. Incidentally, we come to Holyrood, and we would go to Westminster, we would get a straight advocate to control what country we would want a £1.5 billion industry in times of austerity. And a lot of these people that are living in hard times come from the fishing communities. So that's the areas for me that's important. I'll pass over to my esteemed colleague Jim, who wants to be a lot more entertaining than me, and then hopefully we can really answer some questions for you.
Well, thank you very much for coming along. I haven't spoken in Paisley since Jim Mitchell's funeral. And that wasn't the best day, actually, to speak in Paisley. Certainly not for me. A duty and an honour, but it was a very, very good day. What I want to explain to you is why Nicola is wrong. And I'll do that by explaining the reasons why I have already voted with because I'm opposed. And why I decided once I knew there was going to be a referendum, I was going to join as much as I possibly could at my age the campaign to take us out of the European Union. So I'm going to tell you about democracy. I'm going to tell you about workers' rights. I'm going to tell you about how European Union law has had a bad effect on Scotland on two crucial policies that would have addressed two crucial areas of social ill in our community. And I'll tell you a bit more than Gary did about TTIP and why it's absolutely essential that we are not involved in it. Now let me start with democracy. There are tests you can apply, democratic tests that you can apply to any institution to determine whether it's democratic or not. Might be a Bowling Green. Same for a Bowling Green as it is for a governmental organisation. Do you know the people who make the decisions? If you don't know who make the decisions, it's no democracy. If you finally find out who makes the decisions, can you actually get rid of them if you don't like what they do? In the European Union, the answer is no, you can't do it. There are three components of lawmaking in the European Union. At the heart of it lies a commission of 28 unelected people. And it's a bit like a gravy train carousel, if that's no a mix-up. There at the moment 5 former Prime Ministers, 5 ex-foreign ministers, and ministers from the various countries, all in the lead, get appointed for 4 years, they go on the carousel, extremely well paid, don't pay any taxes, then they go off and folk just like them get on the carousel for their term. And the same thing has been going on and on and on since 1956 when the Treaty of Rome was first signed. So they actually initiate and implement law. The European Parliament has a say in that vote. But is it really a democratic organisation? We elected, and everybody else does the same throughout the 28 member states, we elect our MEPs on the basis of Labour, Tory, SNP, UKIP, only when they get there they start cobbling together various groups of interest, because various groups of interest put them on a corporate gravy train in the Parliament as well. Because if you want to have a meeting in Barbados, you have to have a group. And so they cobble together groups. Now, if you can't have pan-European political parties, which we could vote for, and the reason for that is there's no homogeneity among the 28 member states. We're sitting in Paisley. What do we care about the folk in Naples? Or the folk in towns we don't even know their names in Portugal? And what do they care about Sheffield, or the Western Isles, or Liverpool, or Durham, or away down in the corner of England? The answer is nothing. We don't know. So we don't have a genuine history, a genuine common political system, and genuine common political cultures. So it can never be the European Parliament from which you could draw a democratic government with mandates. So that's the Commission. It's unelected. The Parliament is a strange outfit. Then you come to the Council of Ministers. The Commission produces an idea, formulates a policy, the Parliament has a say, and then it goes to the Council of Ministers for final stamping. That Council of Ministers is made up of the heads of government of every member state, 28 of them. Can we dismiss them? No, the answer is no, we don't even know who they are. Now, Ken Cameron goes there, we probably ken that Merkel goes there, and that fella in France. But who's the Italian? You know, who's the Danish guy? Who comes from Finland? You know, who's the Swedish Prime Minister? We don't know them. And also they meet in private, and they give an edict. At the end of the day, we've stamped this policy, that's fine, that's it. If you remember when we changed the light bulbs, you remember that? They made that up one day. Never asked anybody, and no mandate for it. And we don't even know what the discussion actually was there. So when you look at the three components of the European Union lawmaking, it fails the test of democracy. And I rather like a democracy where I know who governs me, I know I can get rid of them every now and again, and that they're accountable to me and folk like me. So it fails the test of democracy. And it cannot be reformed. If it was capable of reform, it would have reformed when Cameron went out and started these so-called negotiations. Just imagine him going into a room and saying, unless you reform, I'm telling you, there's got to be a referendum that will take Britain out of the European Union. Now, that's not a bad negotiating position to be in. Well, they actually said, no, we're no reform. What they did was sleeping. They came to an agreement that they would deny certain benefits to, say, a Polish worker coming to work here. They didn't do that by changing European treaty law, because the treaties are the law. They had a separate agreement that circumvented that. Article 8 of the Lisbon Treaty says that every one of us is a citizen of the European Union, as well as our individual states, and that we must be treated the same in every part of the European Union. That's Article 8. They didn't alter Article 8 to say, aye, but see in Britain. No. Guy comes from Poland, and he brings his family here, no free access to the NHS, no benefits for him at all. No. They didn't alter Article 8. They had a separate agreement. Now you think about it. There is a European Court of Justice which is responsible for maintaining the law. Now I'll come to them in a minute. They're responsible for maintaining the law of the EU. So I'm a Polish worker and I come here and I'm working alongside a Scot and something happens to the both of us and he says, oh, I'm alright, I'm getting benefits. The Polish worker says, well, what about me? Oh, no. You're banned by that circumvented agreement. And he says, oh, I'm not putting up with this. Article 8 says I'm perfectly entitled to the same as you. And he goes to the European Court of Justice. The judges must fine for the Polish worker, because that's the law. This other stuff they did, the secret stuff, that's not the law. So this is an undemocratic organisation that can act in that particular way. No democratic organisation would get away with secret manoeuvres like that. That's one reason why I want out. Then we come to the question, which for me actually is the big one. I was born in the Labour movement, and although I'm in the SNP, I'm still Labour. I'm still part of the Labour movement. I'm a socialist, and I'm former trade union official, and I've fought for workers' rights all the days of my life. So, my party, the SNP, in the wee pamphlet says workers' rights, vital employment rights are safeguarded by EU law, including paid holiday and sick leave, guaranteed parental leave, and equal rights. We've had holiday pay as British law since 1938, the year after I was born, before the EU was ever formed. We don't need the European Union to guarantee our holiday pay. For maternity, the EU has a minimum of it's 14 weeks maternity pay. British law, that's our law, is 39 weeks. So you can keep your EU law, Nicola. I'll opt for the British law, which gives a woman 39 weeks. And then there's paternity leave. The European Union, they won't tell us about this, is very worried, Nicola's very worried about this. The European Union says 4 months. You get what British law says, 52 weeks. So, where is the problem with workers' rights if the UK comes out of the European Union? Somebody said to me the other day, oh, this Tory government, they could get away with their rights. There's no government, Tory, Labour or coalition, has ever attempted to undermine those rights whatsoever. They are well above the minimum required by EU directives. But it goes deeper than that with me. Away back in 1972, I was a Labour MP in South Ayrshire. The Labour Party was split on joining the EEC. Big special conference, 1972. And I spoke at it. And I said I was against joining because the Treaty of Rome enshrined the ethic of capitalism. That employers were free to move their place anytime they wish to any part of that community, irrespective of the damage done to the workers' rights and the community. I've been proved dead right. There's 2 cases have gone to the European Court of Justice, which are vital for workers to understand their position in relation to the employers under the law of the European Union. The first one is called Viking. Viking was the name of a company that ran passenger services between Finland and Estonia. And the Viking management had a great idea for more profit. They would change the Finnish flag to the Estonian flag, which would allow them to sack the Finnish workers on high wages and employ Estonian workers on lower wages. The Finnish workers took collective action. It ended up in the European Court of Justice. The judges had 2 things they had to weigh. One, what the treaty said, that an employer as capital can move anywhere, can relocate anywhere they wish at any time. An absolute right. They have to weigh that against the right to take collective action by working class people. The judgment said come down on the side of the employer, because his rights inside the treaty law are absolute. It said, yes, workers in the European Union have the right to take collective action, but with caveats. It has to be proportionate and it has to be subordinate to the economic view of the employer. No, any question about it, as far as workers' rights are concerned, they take second place. The other case is called Laval. Laval were an East European country in the EU who got a job to renovate a school in Sweden. And there's a thing called the Posted Workers Directive, so that if a company there sends workers to another company in the EU, then they should get the same rights as happens locally. Seems quite sensible. There was a local agreement with the Swedish building workers about wages and conditions. Laval wouldn't pay it. The Swedish workers blockaded the site and wouldn't let them in. That ended up in the European Court of Justice as well. And I'm sure the Swedish workers thought, this postal directive is absolutely clear, no question about it. It says if you come here, the local rate paid. Ah, no, said the European Court of Justice. So you've got to take the employer's position into account. And that's a superior position. No employer in any part of the community posting workers to another part can possibly know what he's going to do in terms of his contract if he finds himself embroiled in local arguments about wages. So they found for the employer against the workers. So anybody in my party, in my leadership, who says you've got to stay in the EU in order to protect workers' rights has done their basic homework. And that is a major problem. Now, I'll come to the third reason. The European Union has one-size-fits-all policy, and it's against what we call state aid. For example, I don't think there's anybody in Scotland who wanted the contract for the ferry services to the west coast to go to Invernahyle's Bar Calmac. It has been an integral part of those communities for as further than I've actually been born. It knows the communities, it can adjust to the communities. Logical, sensible thing was to renew its contract. In fact, there wouldn't have been a contract. It was just a carry on. It was a state owned. No. Under European rules, it had to go out to tender, like the one to the Northern Islands, certainly. Now, if it had won, its main interest would have been maximising profit. And the way you maximise profit is you cut workers' wages and you do away with a pension scheme at the same time. But we were unable, however much the Scottish Government would like Calmac to get it, we had to go through this process of contracting. But these two social issues I want to tell you about. Everybody knows that in Scotland we have a major problem with alcohol. It's endemic, it's the source of deaths, illness, and very often domestic abuse. The Scottish Government knows, and all the research has shown, that if you increase the real price of alcohol, consumption goes down and fewer people die as a result of alcoholism. The Scottish Government does not and did not have the power to increase a bottle of whisky by a fiver or a pint of beer by 10 shillings, whatever it happens to be. They don't have that power. That lies at Westminster. So they sought another way of trying to reduce consumption. And they come up with the idea, which was based on research done by Sheffield University, that if you do something with the unit price of alcohol, it will lower consumption. So they at least were trying to start addressing, which we all know is a major social ill in our community. The Scots Whisky Association took them to the European Court of Justice, arguing that they were acting contrary to EU law. The European Court of Justice found from the Scottish Whisky Association and have sent the case back to the Court of Session where it is at the present time. How that will emerge, we don't know. But it's a very hard case for us to be able to argue in the Court of Session where the European Court of Justice has already said that the measure is against European law. And years have been lost. People have died because we have not been able to implement a policy that we have locally to attack a local problem that we have identified. Then there's the other major social ilm in Scotland called poverty. If you ever go outside, when I shop at Lidl, outside Lidl there's a big poster, and Lidl and Scottish Television are putting money together in a kind of trust to try and alleviate child poverty. And it says in that poster, 1 in 4 children in Scotland are living in poverty. Well, we should not be ashamed of that. One of the reasons for poverty is low wages. A number of people who go to food banks are workers who are on such low wages the money runs out. So the Scottish Government and the Scottish Parliament, Labour Party as well as the SNP, said we can try and tackle that. When there's public contracts given out, and there's millions of pounds in them every year to the private sector, we'll attach a condition to the contract that you must pay the living wage. And we tried to put that into what's called the Procurement Reform Act 2014. The European Commission wrote to the Scottish Government and said, you can't do that, that is contrary to European law. Well, we have the living wage now. 25 and up, living wage. 24 and down, the minimum wage, which by definition is not the living wage. So you've got 2 young folk, one at 26, one at 24, one's getting the living wage, one's getting the minimum wage, low paid. If the Scottish Government now said, we don't like the way George Osborne did that, splitting it between ages, we're going to have a contract condition that says anything that's a public contract pays the living wage to somebody from 18 up to 24. Can we do that? Because it's against European law. So then we have 2 Scottish issues which are real problems for us, which we have fashioned our own policies based on our own knowledge of Scotland, and we cannot implement them because they're contrary to European law, which insists that everything must be the same from the edge of Poland right up to the top of Sheffield. It's a piece of nonsense. Now I come to my final point, which is TTIP. And I'm like Gary. You know, during the 2014 referendum, Philippa Whitfield made her political reputation by letting us all know about the threat TTIP posed to our health service. Not only did it make her political reputation, it actually got her to be selected as an SNP candidate. She's now an MP at Westminster. But somehow or other, a strange silence has fallen upon the Scottish National Party about TTIP. Has to gone away, still being negotiated. And I'll give you an example of how undemocratic this organisation is in relation to TTIP before I explain why it's dangerous to our National Health Service and water. MEPs have all been conducted, the negotiations have been conducted in absolute secrecy. The MEPs were allowed into a closed room to read some of the documents on 2 conditions. One was that they couldn't take any notes, and the other was that they wouldn't tell you and me what they'd read. doing. And all the political parties over my political lifetime were accepting a condition like that. So this is coming, and it's going to allow big American corporations and big European corporations to be able to sue governments if they construe that government policy prevents them getting into the market in our country. There's a similar agreement in North America, which the Canadians signed up to, and already the Canadian government has been sued on matters such as taxation, values, and health and safety regulations. Why is the Scottish Health Service and Scottish Water vulnerable? Because Scotland isn't a state. We are a sub-state of the UK state. And TTIP will apply to states. California, under TTIP, is a sub-state. California is going to get away with saying, oh, sorry, we're one of the biggest economies in the world. We may be a state, a federal state, United States, but say, no. For legal purposes under TTIP, you are a sub-state. We are a sub-state. Let me take a too-smart Harvard-trained lawyer from across the Atlantic to come and look at the UK and say, hey, wait a minute. In the UK, in the biggest part of the UK, which is England, the National Health Service has already been privatised in several areas. So if it applies in the UK state policy, it has to be applied in the sub-state policy because there's no specific exemption for folk like us. And with water, they'll say, Scotland's the only place left with public owned water. All the rest has been privatised in that state. They haven't got a right to stand on it. And they'll be able to argue in the NHS in a way our people have not fully understood. We say that NHS is ours. We own it. General practitioners are not employees of the NHS. They are self-employed, private contractors. The people who supply our medicines and drugs are the big private pharmaceutical companies. The people who dispense prescriptions are the chemists, private companies. Where I come from in Edinburgh, the Royal in Edinburgh isn't owned by the NHS, it's owned by the PFI. So we've already got cracks in our NHS that I will take a very clever lawyer from America to start levering open. If we stay in the European Union, we'll get TTIP and everything it's going to bring to us. If we vote to leave, then we don't get TTIP, where water will remain where it should in public hands, and our National Health Service will continue as we have it at the present time. These are major issues where we've got to make the choice. Now today, Cameron is out telling me that the triple lock on my pension might be sprung open, because if we leave the EU, the economy goes down the swanny, and that's it. Even my bus pass isn't going to be safe. Well, it's difficult to understand this. These are extremely well-educated people, by the way. No, these are people not something. All you need to do is take a minute to read the trade statistics. The European Union exports to us £290 billion worth of goods and services a year, and we export to them £228 billion a year. That's an advantage of £62 billion for them. £290 billion worth of goods and services is one hell of a lot of jobs in the European Union. There's 1 million German car workers alone, wholly reliant on their company that makes them in Germany, selling them over here. Is anybody, even at elementary school level, never mind Eton, could look at those figures and say, they'll not let us trade with them any longer? It's more in their interest to trade with us, actually, than it is us to trade with them. And yet you've got this extremely well-educated man telling us that the economy will go down the Swanee because we'll actually go get a trade deal. It's that you'll be forced into the single market. Now the single market isn't just entry into that big consumer market. It carries obligations. One of them being the free flow of labour. We don't need to go into the single market with its obligations. We can get free entry to the market without the obligations. And that's because of the trade figures. There's something like 350,000 Italian shoemakers whose jobs are reliant on the UK market. The French winemakers have got about 400,000 whose jobs are reliant on the selling into the UK market. So, we leave, and we vote to leave on the 23rd. You don't come out on the 24th. Under Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty, you give 2 years' notice. It's given. Or you give notice and you get 2 years in which to extract yourself. Probably take less than that. But no matter what Angela Merkel and the German foreign minister says and Galut in France, 24th, notices posted. We sit down on either side of the table and we say, well, you've got 290 million a year reliant on free entry to the UK, and you've got 228 relying on entry to yours. Can we not do the common sense thing and just agree to free trade between us? Common sense and self-interest will in fact prevail. So these are the reasons why I came to the conclusion that we would in fact be better out. Now, I'm the architect of the Scottish National Party's policy of independence in Europe. I actually wrote it in 1975 when I was still a Labour MP. Because we just lost the referendum, and I thought that's us in. What do we do? It took to the late 1980s for me to persuade the SNP to adopt the policy. When it was adopted, there were only 12 member states. Each one of them had a veto. So that commission at the centre was constrained because if it knew if it tried to go too far, a country would veto and that would happen. There's not 12 member states, now there's 28. The veto powers have been washed away treaty after treaty. The last one was the Lisbon Treaty. 40 veto powers held by the member states were transferred to qualified majority vote. And I'll tell you what happens in qualified majority vote. About the last decade, when it will start to be introduced, in the Council of Ministers, Britain objected 72 times to a policy and voted against it. And Britain was beaten on the qualified majority vote 72 times. So nobody can say that we are highly influential in that community, as Gordon Brown is trying to prove with a speech today. The European Union is not good for workers. The European Union is not good for democracy. And as the two cases I gave you showed, it's no very good for us here in Scotland either. And I'm very happy to tell you that anecdotally, I'm finding that more and more members of the SNP are saying, no, we're like the Nicola, but on this one, we're going on a different road. What's going to happen on the 23rd, I think in Scotland, we're going to get a bigger vote, leave vote, think we are. And I think that the United Kingdom as a whole, vote Leave is going to win. And that'll be the biggest shake-up for the European Union, and they might have another think about themselves. Because on workers' rights, there's only 3 places where workers' rights have been torn asunder. And it isn't here. It's in the European Union. When they beggared the people of Greece, they cut the Irish public service workers' wages by 25%, and in Portugal they made them SAG teachers and made them cut pensions for folk on very low pensions. From an ordinary working class point of view, the most sensible vote on the 23rd is vote to leave. I'm not going to tell you to vote as often as you possibly can, just say it once, that'll be enough.
Running the show, not our politicians. I've said my speech around and I'm orthodox here, but I think really what I'm trying to say is that we, the public, are investing in an organisation that has not produced a set of accounts. Would any of us here invest in a company that never produced a set of accounts? We're having decisions made behind closed doors about our future. And I would like to think that the panel, do they think along the same lines? Because I think we need out of this golf club arrangement is now no longer suited to the British people.
I would say also, just before we go, is that I do a lot of work in renewables, and one of the companies I'm quite friendly with, although they're not trying to farm. And in Germany, after the Fukushima disaster, Germany took a decision, that's it, with French nuclear. We don't want to take a chance at that side democratically with Germany. Vattenfall, through this sort of TTIP type agreement, Germany told us about, they're suing the German government for hundreds of millions of pounds. And they don't have a leg to stand on. It's not done in court, it's just done in kangaroo court. And they will have to pay that back because they said, well, no, we were promised that there would be no nuclear plant in, say, 5 years' time. And they've said, well, we've changed their policy, so now the German government is doing so. It's the taxpayers' list.
But if you look at the energy industry, I mean, we have had hidden levies put on our electricity bills without the public being told. We are all stakeholders in business. We don't even get a dividend on it, it's higher bills. So I think we need consultants, and the only way we build the consultants.
Well, actually, I don't think we do know. That's said. The SNP has not had a critical view of the European Union since 1992. And the treaties have come and gone, and we've never heard a single word of criticism or anxiety about it. I mean, one of the words that do not pass the SNP's lips just now is Greece. Now, France has actually never complied with financial rules that the Eurozone says should be applied. You think for a minute that the European Central Bank would be in France what it did to Greece. Greece, a small country, you can crush it. I mean, it's quite extraordinary what they've done to Greece. We voted 61% against austerity. The present European Commission, when the referendum was going on, actually dismissed it as an irrelevant circus. And then when they produced 61%, said, I don't know what the question is anymore. And what happened? They then used the left-wing government and actually crushed sorts of voters. Yet, I have never heard a lot from the leadership of the SNP that comes out in support of the Greek people. And the time they have come out in support of the Greek people was when they were having the referendum, when we were sure we didn't want austerity here, was to come out with verbal support, physical support of the Greek people when they were having the referendum. So unless you're prepared to sit down and actually examine the treaties clause by clause, then basically we don't care what we're talking about. You know, when that parliament says, oh, you know that there's been a British right since 1938. Certainly the European directives say that there's a minimum of we're far beyond that. So the only thing I can say to you is I don't think we've read the treaties. I don't think that they seem to me to be people who are in a love affair with the European Union and can't see anything wrong in it whatsoever, and therefore don't submit it to any critique at all. You know, Nicola made a speech yesterday, and Nicola's speech was that Scotland's very important to remain, and there'll be a big turnout in Scotland and different. But that's no substance. I mean, where was the substance? Where was the reasons why the Scots are supposed to remain in on their advice in the European Union. You take the common fisheries policy. It was a trap set for us in 1973. It was a dirty deal, actually. The negotiations were going on, and the European Union sprung the common fisheries policy on the UK negotiators. And they had a problem. This was a new thing that they had been right through the negotiations, so they accepted it. The SNP has never, ever accepted the common fisheries policy. Bearing in mind that Winnie Ewing and Alex Salmon actually come from that area where the fishermen are. So here we are today. If we take the UK out of the EU, the control over those 60% of fishing waters is to go to Westminster, it goes to Hollywood. Now, according to strict constitutional theory, Westminster could say, no, we're going to take all of the fisheries to the control of Westminster. There'd be one hell of a big fight up here, the delicate relations between Westminster and Hollywood. The clever people down there would say it's no worth the battle. So we're in the position where if we vote to get out, fisheries policy that the SNP have wanted since 1973 is on the map. And somehow or other we don't want it. So I can only conclude, and I use the word in its pure technical sense, not in a pejorative sense. They are ignorant of the laws, practices and structures and policies of the EU. The EU that they're telling us to join isn't the EU that exists. Well, on this, I've got to say, I am utterly astonished. I think it is impossible, by the way, for all of the MPs at Westminster and all of the MSPs at Hollywood to be absolutely at one mind on this. I was interviewed by the BBC last week. Brian Campbell interviewed me, and he told me that he knew MSPs who were voting to leave, but they felt that they dare not say, such as the iron discipline that exists inside the SNP. Now, that kind of public unanimity could not be replicated in any other Democratic Party in any other part of the democratic world. There are always folk who take a different point of view on a big major issue like this. But, such as the iron discipline, the mouths are shut. And that didn't say much for how the SNP policy is run as the state through government.
Yeah, I'd like to that as well. I've been through three SNP branches, started out in Cunningham North. I didn't like the NSP there, they boycotted the Yes campaign, so I left there. I joined Cunningham South and I asked them to have a referendum, internal just for the branch, on the EU. Refused, left there, now I'm with Mark South. Good with them, they seem to be okay. But what I have found is that, I want to just jump back to Alan Smith, MEP. I like Alan Smith, I've canvassed with him and had a conversation with him, and I thanked him for representing animal rights, which is important to me, when he was trying to do bullfighting in Spain. And I said to him, I'm going to vote for another guy, I'm going to vote for you now because I like what you've done on that. And he said, well, that's the beauty of the EU. He says, we can lobby to stop bullfighting in Spain, just like they might stop it in England, from Italy or somewhere like that. And I said, look, that's why I vote for you, because I like the fact that you stood up for something that most politicians don't see as important. That was fine, and then I thought, fantastic. I said, well, that should be happening. What's the chances of it happening? So we don't get the influence, because we won't get anywhere with it. And he said it with a straight face, and Alan Smith is one of the real intellectual guys in the party, and a nice guy to boot. And I'm thinking, it just says they don't seem to have thought it through. They must be thinking about other things. And that just bewilders me. But back to the thing about the branches, Cunningham North did boycott the Yes campaign because we refused to take the line of supporting the Queen. Now, I'm not going to go to the Queen, but the point about it was that I'm a Republican, and I think people should be voted, not born into privilege. And what they were saying about the House of Lords, you can't have the House of Lords because they're unelected. Well, if we go down that route, what they're afraid for and say the Queen, she's unelected. So make their minds up, do you want democracy or not? That was my point. The second thing was about the EU. I was starting to get annoyed about the TTIP thing because I felt we were being conned on that one, and I stopped campaigning on that behalf about the EU because it was out of our hands, it wasn't an independent decision. And the SNP boycotted all of our canvassing sessions. Cameron sitting there, he was on TV pretending to impartial tonight, they withdrew all the support and said, you can do it on your own. We don't want to catch results and go Scotland if not the best in 3 times, with something from a 33% to 58%. And that was because we asked people what they wanted from Scotland if they became independent, what's important to you, and we addressed the things on which and they told the truth. If we didn't think it was better, we wouldn't tell them. So there's a lot of stuff like that that goes on, and you don't know, but there is an element of it that you just don't seem to have thought it through, you just seem to love it. Alan Smith, the guy of that intelligence, can actually say, oh, there was no influence. Why would you then continue to support it? It's maybe just something that hasn't, the pen's not dropped here yet. But Jim was a leader, that's that big piece is there, but it's not going to matter. It's just slowing the uptake, you know.
Next question. There's 28 member states, and we pay 20% of the budget. Is that fair? Is that fair?
Well, the idea was that the rich countries would pay to help the poor countries. Same as something happens in Liverpool, then the budget in the UK would actually go and help folk in Liverpool. That was the idea. What they didn't calculate for was, and this is one aspect of immigration that's never actually understood. They didn't calculate for not money going to raise the level of economic activity in the Eastern European countries, but the folk would leave. Very often the better educated people. You know, one of the problems they have in Poland just now is a lack of young people, because they're out through the free flow of labour. So I'm not against the idea that if you're a rich part, you help the poor part. We do it here. In Scotland, we help Ireland, we help the Western Isles, we help Orkney. Nothing wrong with the principle whatsoever. It's the other reasons that the EU falls down, as far as I'm concerned. The democracy, the lies about workers' rights, for example. And what happened when we had these 2 social issues when we produced our own policies? Now, if something happens in Poland, then I think the folk in Poland who have a problem are entitled to produce a Polish solution to their problem. No a theoretical European Union one that says, no, you can't do that. So, this is what happens when you've got an aristocracy running a country. When we had an aristocracy running the UK before democracy, how did they care what ordinary folk needed? Yes, they did. They looked after their own interests. Well, we've got a kind of aristocracy in Brussels. They're unelected. They can actually probably sit there for another 4 years on very big salaries and get a huge pension at the end of it. They are cushioned against the austerity that they are imposing upon the folk in Portugal and Greece. They don't feel any pain. No, they don't go to a food bank. They don't go without any money. They're no in absolute poverty. So they're run by this kind of aristocratic, unelected elite that's totally divorced from the people. And if we vote to remain in, the idea is that that will change. That's not true. There's 5 presidents inside the European Union. All of them unelected. There's the President of the Commission, the President of the Council of Ministers, the President of the Parliament, the President of the Central Bank, and the President of the Finance Committee of the Eurozone. And they produced a report. And that report says the only way we can make the euro work is by having fiscal unity. In other words, one government budget for the lot. And that means, of course, you have to then have political unity, because somebody has to make the big decisions about how the budget is going to be formed. That's going to be an undemocratic organisation, because the 5 folk who thought up the idea are unelected, and when they come to the final structures, you'll find the European Unelected Commission at the heart of them once again. And they'll drive on to what has always been the objective of that elite, to have a United States of Europe where the member states are relegated in importance. And in that United States of Europe, we'll still have the Unelected Commission driving that new ship. So already happened in the Lisbon Treaty. The Lisbon Treaty, up until the Lisbon Treaty, the European Union did not sign any international agreement in its own right. That Lisbon took care of that. When TTIP comes to be signed, it will not require 28 member state parliaments to endorse it. It will in fact be signed by the Commission, an international agreement in its own right with the United States of America. So it's not a question that, oh, nothing will really change. There's an awful lot going to change. And if you read the papers, there's a lot of things about to happen which they're holding back, because if we found out about them, there would be another even bigger lead vote than we're likely to get at the present time. Wait till we're full. You know, the SNP not that long ago will say we'll renationalise the railways, we'll renationalise the post office. The plans that they've got say they will be allowed to do that either. So it's not a question of Brexit or the status quo. That organisation will move on in its usual undemocratic fashion. Which? Reforms. Others might follow that. Well, I don't think the Baltic states will follow, because they are great beneficiaries. They get a lot of money. Poland won't leave the EU because it sees the EU as a great partner in relation to Russia. It's all a Russian-Poland thing for many centuries. I think we might find Italy to get into wonder, because Italy is actually suffering very considerably at the present time. I don't think anything will leave. What I think will happen is that it will be an incredible shock to that EU system. They might finally realise that they've gone too far with the Lisbon Treaty and all the other things that they are actually planning. Like every other elite, they find it difficult to be self-critical. This one is a denial of two things. First of all, the Schengen Agreement, which allows 3-4 people, obviously is a danger to security. And yet they can't bring themselves to say, yeah, that's true, so we'll suspend it for the next 5 years. They're incapable of doing that. The other denial is the euro. The eurozone is dysfunctional and it's a disaster. Every economist in the world is expecting it to fall. That's why the 5 presidents who have got together. So I can't, maybe Italy might think about it. They're the original signers, to the Treaty of Rome. So I don't think that any country is likely to come out. But internally, I think the warning bell will be rung. You went too far with the United Kingdom, start drawing back to the likes of Italy, Spain, Portugal, Greece, and perhaps the Netherlands and Denmark as well. I think that will be the shock to their system, the big shock to their system.
Yeah, returning to the bullfighting, I don't like bullfighting either, but I just feel as a British person it would be my right to try and ban it. And I think I'll be the Spanish boycott Spain and refused by Spanish wine and protest, but the actual ban should come from the Spanish, not the Spanish alone, because I believe in just demonstrates, it's not just Spain, it's all the member states, they're no longer independent countries at that. If it did happen, but theoretically it could have happened. I don't understand the Nicola Sturgeon to go on television and say that the member states are independent, it's a coalition of independent. This is ridiculous. Does she not know? Does she not, like, can she no longer define what independence is? Like, how can this SNP have lost their way so badly that they can't even see what independence is anymore?
Yeah, that's sweet to say it, because it's been after I joined when I was 16. I think you can 10 years I've had an SNP, and then don't do that. You still get picked up in that one. No, I've been involved in that since I was about 16, and it's been a big part of my life. And even though that I'm not politically, I'm not a politician, which is a bit odd, really, for most of the people that hang on that long. It is something that is bothering me, but I agree with you. I don't think we should be interfering with it. I would like to see the fight stop, but I don't think we should really be taking anything to do with it. I was using the opportunity quite blatantly. If we could stop it, I would jump on and try and do it. Why not? If they can stop things here. As a principle of it, I think we should leave them to it. I think you're right with that. I think I really honestly don't know. There's been things going through my mind of recent days, and I've not really come to any great conclusion on it yet. But I feel that if the SNP, if Scotland independence when we've had it before, we would have been vetoed by Spain for the EU anyway, because it's scared of the Catalonia thing. But now I think this kind of talks that Europe would like, the EU would like to keep us. That if it came out, they would probably welcome that. Then we'll have to take the euro, if that's the case. And I honestly don't think, I mean, I was at the SNP conference, I heard the conversation behind the scenes, and I heard say Tommy Shepherd and all the different ones say to the press 60% for India, that's what we're looking at here, that's what the polls have got to say. And if that was the case, I think we would be closer to 75, because we can't, Carol and I had a discussion about it just there when we had our dinner, and I honestly don't think that 60% would be enough, because it would be hard enough to sell independence when oil prices have dropped so much without on top of that we're going to tell them use the euro as well, because that was a big stumbling point when people were saying, well wait a minute, we're going to have to use the euro, aren't we? And that was almost bigger than life itself. I don't know why. I didn't think it's that big a deal. I didn't want to use the euro because of the state it was in. I couldn't be sure the currency was all that for that much. The Deutsche German can use the Deutsche mark, you can use the pound, but the euro really scares me.
But the thing is, it's not independence.
It's in your life.
I'll explain to you. There's a thing called intellectual rigor that you apply in examining issues, and it is sadly missing in the top echelons of the Scottish National Party. There are two concepts which we don't understand. Nicola believes that you share sovereignty in the EU. That's where she fails. That concept actually doesn't apply. Sovereignty is not shared in the EU. Sovereignty is transferred to the EU. And that's the big difference. And if you transfer sovereignty, you can transfer a limited amount, if we do that with the United Nations, for example, or UNESCO, but when you transfer over 50% of your sovereignty to another body, you're no longer independent. And that is what she doesn't seem to understand. 72 times the UK was beaten in the Council of Ministers. That couldn't happen with an independent country. And the reason it was beaten 72 times and accepted it, it had already transferred its sovereignty over those particular issues. And until Nicola and the leadership can understand the difference between shared and transfer, we'll still get this nonsense coming from her claiming that everybody in there is independent. Go and ask the Greeks if that's true.
But don't they see what they're encouraging Scottish people to do here?
Well,
Encourage them to agree to this loss of sovereignty. The people themselves are about to give away their own sovereignty. That's very difficult to come back from.
well, we can't come back from it, by the way. If we vote to remain, there'll be no come back of sovereignty. And also, there's no hope. a second referendum, say in 5 years' time, that the European Union will take a different attitude towards us as it did last time. Last time they told us to get stuffed. Now that's not because they're wicked people. Look at from their end of the telescope. The last thing they want is for a part of a member state to secede. Because to accommodate that member state as a new independent member, you've got to open up the treaties to change. And that's the last thing that they want to happen. Because every Eurosceptic and every member state will say, here's our opportunity, we're in there, the bits we don't want, and that sort of thing. So they don't want that to happen. And they don't want a row with Spain, because Spain would say, we'll veto. And unless you agree with us, the Spanish will say, we're going to create hell inside the European Union. So they've got reasons for telling Scotland you can't get in. And so far, Nicola Sturgeon has not produced one single reason to believe that next time they're going to do exactly the same to us, because their policy has been consistent. In that pamphlet there, I quote the letter. Way back 2014, March 2014, which refers to their position in 2004. They've been consistent. They don't want us to secede from the UK, and that's what they'll tell us next time. Now, if the UK comes out of the European Union, the next time better together, can you get them in Europe on its side? It's got nothing to do with them and nothing to do with us. It's a simple matter of Scotland and England. Stay in or come out. But those in the party have got to think ahead. If that happens, if the UK comes out, then next time you have nothing to do with us, doesn't matter what they say, they're out. We then have to be able to answer. Where will independent Scotland trade? Well, that's when you go and talk to Norway about the European Free Trade Agreement and the European Economic Area, who have access. But why is our government not talking to them? I'm a trade union official. I was taught by some of the best working class men you could meet. And I was taught, never going to negotiate with only one point, because if you lose it, the game's a bogey. You always have fallback points, different positions. We should have gone into the last referendum saying to the EU, you don't want us. No problem. We've been talking to the Norwegians and we'll go with them. But we didn't do that. And the party and the government are still not talking to the Norwegians. And the Norwegians, let me tell you, a pal, 40 years, married to a Norwegian, comes out occasionally, was telling me the Norwegians don't understand us. And they say, we don't understand you. You can be members of the European Free Trade Association, you're away from England, you certainly have obligations as trading with the EU, but you don't have any foreign policy, defence policy, home affairs policy. If you wanted to do something with alcohol, that's your business. So party members have to realise now that we're a party with 100,000 members and we don't have a single policy committee among the party. 100,000 people, we must be stuffed with enormous talent and experience all over the place. So come the next conference, the real challenge for the membership is to demand policy committees and demand that the Scottish Government goes and talks to EFTA so that we have a formal position for the next time and we'll go caught out next time as we were last time.
The only thing I'd add to what Jim says is that I'm a bit cynical about that whole thing, because I think back to the NATO vote, and I'm not sure that everybody is SNP incidentally, but we had a vote in 2012, 2013 to see if we wanted to break all tradition and become a part of NATO. Now we saw it as it was too hard to sell independence, we can't defend ourselves, so we joined NATO. When that vote came out, think really carefully orchestrated, because in branches they made sure that whoever was going from the branch had the voting rights, there was enough reliable people who could make those votes. So I can tell you right now how the people would vote from my branch and the one next to it, so they can calculate exactly as much how many people go against that vote will win. So whatever vote they want to win, they will select the people as to they can't go to conference, they're too much a rebel. just going to be an SNP lots of that. I know they do. I just happen to be an unfortunate local enough.
There's quite a lot of SNP supporters who are going to vote Remain because of the promise of, well, because the hope of an NDF 2. Surely your NDF 2 hasn't been defined. We clearly share a thing with share a currency with the countries in the EU, not the EU, but the countries in the EU has got on. With completely different set of circumstances from the last white paper. Has anyone thought this through, and what would you say to people who are going to vote Remain because of hope for NDF 2?
No. Yeah, this was a tactic by Nicola, who said, I can get them to Remain by implying that we would have a second referendum, if England vote to come out, we vote to remain in. That's a good plot. No question about that. Very clever idea. But actually, if you read the SNP manifesto just a few weeks ago, it does say that the SNP believes in staying in the EU. But what it doesn't say, if the rest of them vote to come out and we vote to stay in, I've got a mandate for a second independence referendum. The mandate one doesn't appear. Now the power over whether a second one will be held still lies at Westminster. Last time, Alex Salmond had a political and moral mandate for an independence referendum. He had no legal right. Cameron was faced with the problem, he had the legal right, but he had no moral and political position. He thought they were going to win at the park, 70-30, so he transferred the power up until midnight on the 18th of September. 1 minute past midnight, back down south. Now, if the SNP, let's assume the Brexit thing comes as Nicola says, should be mandate. And you think for a minute that Cameron this time is going to say, yes, you can have a second independence referendum, because he was thinking you had no mandate, you had the chance. You had the chance in May, and you didn't take it. So you'll have to wait to 2021. Then you can ask for it again and see what happens. So that gives us 5 years, possibly, to work. And I go back to the point we made a while ago. Policy committees inside the SNP. The white paper came out of the cabinet, didn't come out of the party. There was no discussions with the party. Tell you a story. Margot wasn't well. So I went down to get her copy. And I'm standing with an SNP MSP. And I says to him, you can't the difference between you and me? And he said, I'm an MSP. And he goes, no. I said, no, I don't know. That's no the difference. The difference is when you and I pick up that document, you are bound by every dot and comma. And you've had no contribution to it. Even if you don't agree with it, you've got to support it. I'm not in that position at all. And until the party realises that policy making has to be much wider than the leader's office in Hollywood, we'll keep making mistakes. Now, I don't want to go into the name person one, but I'm telling you, 10 minutes of discussion would have stopped us going in to what is a quagmire. I think the named person is the SNP's poll tax. It's replete with so many potential pitfalls that will follow us from this year to the next election. Whereas, had there been a proper policy committee which would have debated, for example, the meaning of well-being. Now, I've been a legislator. Well, all words are ambiguous. What does well-being mean? When I was 17, I was 60, and my brother was 2 or 3 years older. Saturday night, my brother was away from the dance, away to the party. I actually preferred to read a book. And my father said to me, there's something wrong with you. He actually said something wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. Now, if you look at the act, and you come to well-being, and being respected by me, because well-being is then better be careful, particularly if you're talking about the privacy of the family. There's one word missing in that act. Now, the intentions were good, I don't dispute that. There's a very important part missing. You get what it is? Parent. They're not mentioned. So, unless the party realises that policy making by a very small group of people is not the most sensible way to actually make it. And that when I joined the SNP, there was policy groups, people could disagree, but it meant that we brought intellectual rigour to policy. Things were iron-duped and teased-duped and better understood through debate and discussion in policy-making committees. It hasn't happened in the SNP for a very, very long time. And until it does happen, getting to the next independence referendum, we've got to make sure that mistakes were made with white paper are not repeated. 5 minutes when I told everybody that the 10% corporation tax cut was a gift to the Labour Party. I debated with Neil Findlay from Labour. And all Neil was talking about was the 10% corporation tax. And he was talking to trade unionists and you see the bruise going down, and then the common currency. If you're going to have a currency union, it takes two people to agree. All you needed was one to say no and uncertainty. And that was a gift to George Osborne. It was always going to say no. But here's the problem. When the white paper was published and that became the policy, my pals put me on this Twitter thing. And I said, this is a disaster. I was accused of disloyalty. Now, I had applied my mind politically and said, what would I do if I was George Osborne? I would say no, because that sows uncertainty. Even if he thought, we'll have to agree if they did, but right up to podium, to say no. That means the run about, there'll be no thing to say to folk, what's my money? 10 minutes of a discussion outside the leadership group would have made sure they didn't make that particular mistake. We could have phrased it on the basis that technically it's a very sensible thing to do. The day he said no, he said, well, that's it, that's gone in here, it's what we're going to do. We didn't do that inside the party. And I must tell you, I think the party membership has to take a large share of responsibility for the circumstances that are there today. There's been too much hero worship and a lot of realisation that all our gods have been freaking clay.
Can I just answer one thing?
Just to get me into trouble if I go much there.
Your European Court of Justice, you've said in the named person policy, the one word that's missing is parent. If a Scottish parent takes SNP to court on its named policy, under human rights, the right to private family life, how would the European Court of Justice look at that?
Well, it wouldn't be the European Court of Justice, it would be the European Court of Human Rights, which sets the strike. That's nothing to do with the European Union. That's drawn from the Council of Europe. Well, now it comes down in favour of the payment, of course. That's why I say this is our poll tax. Unless we do something really rapidly about it, stop it, and have another look, we'll get this month by month. The cases all over the place. You'll have parents fighting a named person, and a named person actually becoming very ill and losing their job and all that. And every time it will come back to us. Just the way the poll tax finally haunted Margaret Thatcher. And this is our poll tax. And that's one of the great problems. And when you're in a hole, don't dig any further. But the party has responsibilities. We've allowed a hierarchy to develop in the party, which wasn't there when I joined in 1980. We've allowed that to develop and allowed that hierarchy to take control of policy absolutely, where the membership is expected to follow whether it likes it or not. And that is happening with the European referendum at the moment. We're getting what we can all just simply say, stuff that isn't true is being fed to the party, and the party is being asked to feed it to the people. And that's the party's responsibility as well as the hierarchy's responsibility.
Any other questions or points that you'd like to raise?
Would anybody like to comment on Cameron's supposed party? God to protect us from the super status protection ever closer to you. Or what it's worth, is it worth anything?
Oh, no. Cameron, you actually have to look at the so-called real Cameron law. We had to pay a price for what we extracted. And that price says that the United Kingdom will not put any prohibition on the other member states developing closer integration. So they will develop towards the United States of Europe, and say about 5, 6, 7 years down the line, they will say to the UK, well, that's where we're going. Do you want to be on the fringe, or do you want to come and join us? And all the pressure will be for the UK to join the putative United States of Europe. Because that's the price they extracted from him. But you know, this European referendum, the strange thing is, the Prime Minister's deal has never been mentioned since day one. He doesn't go around about saying, look at the deal I got, boys. That's it. Never mentions it. Interestingly enough, the Leave site very rarely mentions it either. It's on the Fort Leave official site, no history and all the rest of it. But they don't make a great deal of it.
Isn't there a problem that the revisions to the treaties are only going to be made next time the treaties are over for whatever? You know, we don't know what this working disposal thing even is. So
No.
how can you put a vote on it and vote?
No, of course you're voting for a European Union that is on the move.
Yeah.
You don't know quite where it's moving. You know where it's intending to move to, but how it's going to do that treaty by treaty, we don't know at the moment. If we vote to remain in, then that will be accelerated. Because in Brussels, the Commission will say, call the UK bluff. Don't need to worry about them any longer. And by the way, that's a lesson to the rest of the Eurosceptics and the other 28 member states. When it comes to the crunch, Project Fear will win. We now have a mandate. We'll be a mandate to carry on.
And I've heard a couple of people inside us told me that part of the deal, as Jim said, we did have to give up something, was that Turkey, the Turkey situation, Turkey may not become a member in the next 5 or 10 years. That's, who knows? Probably not. But they do hold all the cards because they're dealing with the migrant crisis for Europe just now, and they have been offered 1 million visas that can have free movement of people. I think it's up to 1 million people can move, and that was pretty much today in the Sunday paper. So that's become bigger news, I think, as the days go on. But again, as Jim said, it's something we will wait till after the result before that will be made clear. I think Turkish people, my friend's husband's in Turkey, is a great guy, but it does open up a border right from the Iraqi-Syrian border all the way to Scotland, an open border, and I just think we need to close the borders and just not so much stop people from travelling, but control who comes in, who comes out of these countries, because there's allegedly there's 5,000 IS terrorists or Daesh terrorists in mainland Europe, and that's the European Union that's saying that it's scared of that. We're just hoping that the European Championships, it's not football championships, will go through with just fan trouble this year.
Do you think that uncontrolled immigration could lead to war on our own turf, because people will not listen to those housing, because people will get together, so it increases tension and lack of safety if we can't control
I think the problem is, and I'm an American born person. I was a wee boy, I came to Scotland when I was 9. I was saying to Cameron, I think I get probably punched every day at school 6 times because of a wee whiny American accent that the kids took exception to. And I thought to myself, my mum said, you have to fight back. And I'm saying, there's 10 of them at the time. And there's no real answer to it. And my point was that I want to be liked, I don't want to be hated, so I don't want to be fighting with them. And it just took a fight with the biggest boy in school that I just happened to win my luck and stopped overnight. But if there had been a wee clan of American whiny accented kids over there in the corner, I would have joined them, probably from the dislike to the Scots. And there would have been tension there. But I had to force myself to try to be liked. When you're a wee boy, those things are important to you. And I wanted to be well liked in the school, which is not all well, but I kind of got there. But I think that the speed of immigration is really scary when not so much country, residence, culture. You need to understand, if I go to a foreign country, try to speak the language, try to fit in as best I can, try not to be too different. Of course, I try to be different.
Immigration. People have been afraid to talk about it ever since, Bell's speech way back in the 1960s. Became a topic. But we actually have to talk about it because it is a problem. And people recognise that it is a problem. You've got to analyse immigration. There are three kinds of immigration. One is genuine asylum seeker, who is coming away from a government where they're prosecuted. Under international law, we have an obligation to them and we must meet it. Then the other two, there's a category of short-term economic migrant who only comes to a country for a short term to make as much money as possible to send it back home or take it back home. And I'm one of those. I worked in Saudi Arabia for a while. So I was an economic migrant in Saudi Arabia. I didn't intend to stay there permanently. I went and worked there for a year and a half, made some money, never come back. So I've been an economic migrant. We get economic migrants as well. They come here for relatively short periods of time, don't really care about their living conditions because that's not the purpose. In fact, the better living conditions, the less money sent home. They are being exploited by employers. And they exploit the indigenous worker inadvertently. Under the European Union rules, a worker can come here for 3 months under the local rate. After that, it has to be the local rate. What the agencies do, they're the ones that recruit them, not the companies here, the agencies. They take them back just before the 3 months is up on a cheap Ryanair flight, sign them up for another 3 months, and so can maintain below the given rate. That should be regulated. That's how we should tackle that kind of economic migrant. Because if that was regulated, the agents would have to register their contracts with the Scottish Government, and their contracts would have to be the local level. The worker would have to register his contract to make sure that the agent wasn't being crooked about the contract. So the incoming short-term economic migrant would not be exploited as they are at the moment. Gang masters and folk like that. Some things are going on that we don't know anything about. The other economic migrant is the one that Scotland needs. That's the one who wants to come and live here, put down roots and bring up the families. I was travelling between Glasgow and Ayr, and it was very busy. One of the stops at Prestwick International Airport, this wee boy sat beside me, we were going about 9 or 10, Scottish accent, chatting away to him, and I says, "You've gone on your holidays?" And he says, "Aye, I'm going out to see my grandpa and my granny in Poland." Now, that's the kind of family that we want here. You're not asking them to say, "Oh, my Polish culture, has gone." We've got Italian Scots. Remember, the Italian culture is very important to them, but they're third or fourth generation Scots. We have 5 million of a population. Suppose we had another 500,000. It has a great economic benefit. And I'm not talking about folk paying taxes. The more folk we've got, the bigger demand in the market. There'll be a bigger demand for hairdressers and taxi drivers and restaurants and things like that. More cans of beans, because you get more folk buying. That brings the economic benefit, and if the roots are down, they're producing the children that will be required to pay my daughter's pension. Folk forget that. Who's going to pay my daughter's pension? About 50-something. Well, it's somebody around about 12-year-old at the moment. I'll have to see her right through her pension age. So that's the rational way to examine it. They need regulated, and you also need a fair degree of control. Now, I'm a socialist. I believe in planning. If I was a local authority, I really do need to know how many children are going to go to school in 5 years' time at primary 1. I really need to plan the health service for a growing population. But one time we were planning for a lower population, believe it or not. Now we have to plan for a higher one. So you need to have, if you're going to be honest about it, you need to have a degree of control of the number of people coming onto the labour market. Because all working class people have to sell is their labour. If there's 10 folk after one job, the employer is in the bargaining position. But if the employer is after 10 folk, the 10 folk are in the bargaining position. So the regulation of the labour market, from a working class bargaining point of view, is absolutely essential for a society influenced by socialism. But such has been the toxicity of this, that people have been afraid to talk, and now, if anybody does talk, they attempt to shut them down by calling them racist. Now, how can you be racist, by the way, against a fellow European? They're of the same race. So even, if you apply logic, that jibe isn't true. But we've got to have the intellectual honesty to say, yes, there is a problem with open borders because you do not know the numbers, therefore we have to have a degree of control of the numbers. And I'm like, I think you control the numbers by a point system. Because what is not understood either is that we actually stop folk coming in from the rest of the world, who we would like to come in. The Scottish Government has a policy. It would love all these young Chinese, for example, who come to our university and finish, to be able to work with us for 2 or 3 years before they go back. Very bright. But they're not EU citizens, so the Scottish Government can do that. Why should we keep Australians, New Zealanders, Brazilians, Filipinos? You need an immigration policy that has a world sweep, not just simply an EU sweep. And the problem is,